Hey everyone, it's Kirk here again at Option Alpha. So I wanted to do this video just to recap where I am with my own personal zero DTE trading. So it's been about 295 trades across 4 different bots. So I want to kind of go through it, give you my opinion on it, my thoughts, my feedback on my own performance, and analyzing what I could potentially look at improving moving forward. So here is my 4 bots that I'm currently running that are zero DT strategies. Actually 3 that are zero, and one's a 1 DT strategy, just to kind of cross that 1 DT range that we had talked about in a previous video. You can see I've got them all selected under this bot group for zero DTE. So the 4 strategies I basically run are 4 different strategies that I've kind of put together. One is the narrow iron condor that I did a video series on. This one is another one I did a video series on. I didn't do video series on these 2, but these 2 are other strategies that I run that I think generally are complementary to it. So I'll kind of walk through this as we go through it. But this is where basically it's been for the 295 trades. So up a little bit of money right now. This does swing around quite a bit depending on market volatility, but I figured, at some point we got to, kind of walk through these after a couple hundred trades and start to analyze it. I always tell people, like, after 10 trades or 50 trades, you can't really look at it, but after 200, 300 trades, you can kind of objectively look at it and say, okay, are we kind of moving in the right direction, or are we not moving in the right direction? So, so this is one that I think is an interesting one. I think that, just kind of looking at this broadly speaking, it's not a big allocation overall. I mean, yes, it says, I've got 23,000 allocated to it, but at the end of the day, these things don't really take up a lot of capital. So the actual total, like my bot allocation says 23,000. I probably overestimated that amount because I put 10 in this one and 3 and 5 and 5. But ultimately, it doesn't require a lot of capital for each of these trades, sometimes $200, sometimes $50. So it hasn't been quite a lot that I've had to allocate to it. So I could probably reduce the allocation in the bots and that would make the return look higher, but I'm just showing you guys what it's been at since I just started these and just put some capital into it. So these ones here, so it's a little bit of money, which is good. That makes sense. If I go, into the analyze for all of these positions, and again, I'm just going into the analyzer here inside of positions, and then the analyze tab, I'm selecting that bot group, and then of course live trades. You can see kind of the P&L trajectory that it's been since I basically started it at the beginning of the year. And I did 3 years of range, but really I didn't start trading, these zero DT strategies till the beginning of this year. And you can see kind of the trajectory of the P&L. I said it's definitely had its ups and downs. It's definitely been, a volatile thing where you go on a little bit of a run streak and then you get hit by a big loser, etc. That also is kind of the nature of some of the strategies, which I'll go through. So it kind of makes sense that we would be in that range. If I did the video just a couple days ago before Friday, it was riding really high. And then, of course, market volatility kind of smashed it down. So you can see that kind of seems like a little bit of the trajectory of the strategy. So is that good? Is that bad? I don't know. We'll talk about it as we keep going through this. So right now, what you're looking at here is about 295 positions overall. Number one, I could never do this personally, manually trading. There's no chance. I know myself. I could never consistently get into 295 trades the same way at the same time of day and be able to manage them or not manage them or whatever the case is. So kudos to the bots for helping me manage this and run this strategy, because there's no way I could get into this number of trades. This is also one of the reasons why I do like zero DT, because I didn't have to wait 6 years to get to 295 trades. If you're doing monthly trades, like every 30, 40 days, which I still do bots that do that, but the timeline it takes to get to a meaningful amount of trades that you can analyze and then determine how you're going to move forward is really, really long. So with zero DT, you're able to get lots and lots of trades on, which means that time frame gets compressed, which means you can analyze things a lot faster, which is, I think, pretty helpful in the way that I trade. So win rate is just under 50%. We'll talk about this here in a second. It's not, I don't go for trades that are necessarily super, super high profitability trades or like win rate trades. This is kind of mostly a function of the strategies that are built into this zero DT, but it is something that I do want to look to improve moving forward. I'd like to get that win rate, definitely over 50%. Right now, win rate under 50%, a little bit of a coin flip. Profit factor, just a nudge above 1, which is good. So that's fine. I'm okay there. You can see some of the average metrics here. The average win-loss is pretty interesting. So even though I've got some strategies where I could take literally a $500,000, $800,000 loss on a day, and I have taken some of those, you can see that the wins on average about 190, the losses on average about 156. So broadly speaking, it's manageable. It's not like we're going through, wins that are $10 and losses that are $5,000. So personally, to me, like, I look at this again, this is just all me talking to my own, strategy and thinking about it in my own mind. This is, something that I just kind of broadly think, okay, this, kind of makes sense. That's okay for me. I like that. So days in trade and days in, it's about a couple hours. So most of these are kind of entered at the end of the day. So a lot of these are either 1:30 or 2:30 or 3:30 in the afternoon. So I'm not spending a lot of time in trades, which is kind of the point of doing this. So distribution of strategy. So you can see it's all SPX. So I don't trade anything else in these except SPX. So that's an easy one. Distribution of strategies. Iron butterflies took the cake and had the most profits. Iron condors here, I do trade those as well, but you can see those were the most profitable ones. If I do run the hindsight, let me just actually click into this too. So you can see like the distribution here for iron butterflies is actually very interesting, where you can have, some pretty big winners. You nail some, you get some pretty close. Obviously, most of these, because they're just small little losers. Sometimes they're, $100. Sometimes, like I think the other day, there was like a $30 with high volatility. You can have these $30, $40 bets. These are just kind of, as the strategy progresses and as it finds trades in different market environments, sometimes you get things that are just, like really easy bets where you could be making a bet for $40, but potentially win $200. You're not going to always win on those, but that's kind of the name of the game for some of the strategies is low win rate, but hopefully when you win more than you lose when you lose, right? So that's the idea there. For iron condors, this one's a little bit different. If I sort this by P&L, we still have some good P&Ls here for iron condors, but these iron condors are where sometimes we'll take some pretty big losses. Like last week on October 10th, which I think was the Friday last week, where the market was just super, super crazy. You can see $1,800 loss, full loss on that big wide position that I had. So that's ones that you got to be careful of. It. Like I said, that's not... The averages show kind of the average P&Ls of it. You are going to have some of these outliers here. If your strategy that you're backtesting does have outliers, just be cognizant that it could potentially happen. In my case, it has happened almost 2 times here, which is interesting. And again, something that I note now because there's one strategy that I probably want to improve. I'll do a video series on that and kind of see how I can kind of enhance that strategy, kind of curb some of this max risk here. So it's not that it didn't do well through that, but it's definitely not something I want to keep doing moving forward. So if I run the hindsight report, this is always helpful to run the hindsight report. Remember, hindsight report basically takes all the positions that you're looking at right now and assumes that you held them all till expiration. Just kind of looking back, if you did any early management of any strategies, was that helpful or was that detrimental to the strategy? There's only one strategy that I currently run that does early management, takes profits at 40%. I think I talked about it or showed you here. This one here, you can see the iron butterfly at 150 does take profits at 40%. It's actually our best performing one right now, total P&L wise. So it's interesting that it does do pretty well. If you look at the actual hindsight report, it actually does say that generally speaking, we should have let that thing go to expiration. We're kind of leaving some money on the table. So that's an interesting one. We can also go back and start to look at and say, okay, hey, we're taking profits at 40%. What if we just let it go to expiration? How's that impact our win rate and our returns on that strategy? So, but again, broadly speaking, because that one started a little bit later, you can see it doesn't make an insanely big difference. I mean, there is a P&L difference, obviously, probably for some of the days where maybe it kind of swung back into that range and kind of nailed it for that iron butterfly. But it's definitely something to take a look at, something to note, and something just to look at, I guess you could say, moving forward. So that's kind of the performance of it. If I look at these strategies, and again, just kind of like going through these strategies together, what I have here, and I'm just kind of explaining that because it's my thought process around this too. I've got a 150 iron butterfly that's a 0 DT. So that's entered later in the day, not super late in the day, trying to get into a little bit of, I think, mostly positive skew for this strategy. So an iron butterfly kind of slightly above the market, but it does also take a 40% profit. So if it gets out of that position, it should take a 40% profit and get out of that position early. We got my normal 230 run until expiration iron condor. This one's a little bit more tricky in that it's looking for an iron condor, but it's also got to meet some pretty tough pricing requirements. So sometimes if the markets are ultra calm and volatility is super low, then it won't get into a trade because it just can't find the appropriate price. Broadly speaking, that's been good for the strategy because it's helped it avoid trades that, would have probably been losing trades. So it trades a little bit less than every single day, but it's probably a little bit more stringent on its requirements. This 0DTE wide body one is a really interesting one. It's one that I'll show you in a backtest. But the idea around this one when I added it was this concept around trying to pull that win rate a little bit higher. So a lot of the strategies I was running before I added this one in there, were all very low win rate strategies. And so the 0DT wide body was an attempt to try to pull a strategy, the overall portfolio, a little bit higher on win rate. And so if I can pull that higher win rate, I can do that by adding strategies that have, significantly higher win rates. Problem with this strategy is currently that it does have a really high win rate, but it does get into those strategies that have a max loss of, say $1,800 or something like that. This is the one that had that max loss of $1,800, where if you actually look at it and you can see like it just will go on a run and then it'll get smashed by just like one outlier, and then it'll go on a run and it'll get smashed again. So it's been an interesting one to see kind of play out. To me, this is one that probably needs a little bit of focus and a little bit of massaging at this point. The backtest still looks good on it, but we could probably try to curb some of the max loss outliers for this one moving forward. The 1DT narrow iron condor one, this one's been pretty interesting. I went through a video on this, so I won't recover it. Just like last week I went through this. So it's basically performing about expected. It just doesn't have an insane amount of trades just yet because it's my newest one that kind of I'm running there. So all right, so if I go look at the back test of these, and this is what I kind of think about when I put these all together. So I'm putting all these together, and although I'm running these strategies all at the same time, I do want strategies that, generally speaking, fit well together. Like I wouldn't add a strategy that is another 230 iron condor of the same strikes with a slightly different variation. Like that wouldn't really make sense because it would be just essentially the same logical thing as something I'm already running, right? So when you're adding strategies, or when I think about adding strategies, I want to think about adding strategies that complement the other strategies that I'm in right now. And so if you think broadly about how I have this one set up, this one is set up. So this one right here is, I believe this one's the 0 or the next day. Yeah. So this one here, D, this is my next day strategy. So I've got a 1DTE strategy. This is my super, super wide iron condor strategy. Again, the attempt here is to kind of pull up the win rate. This is my normal 230 iron condor, and then I've got a 150 iron butterfly. So I'm trying to get a good mix of not only times, but also different strategies that kind of blend well together. So hopefully the summation of all of this is that when some are zigging, the others are zagging, and overall the whole portfolio will go higher as we keep moving forward. So you can see here for this one, this number C here that we talked about, this is that ADX wide body iron condor, super, super wide position. It should win about 90% of the time. Worst loss, at least when we did the back testing, was 1900. That's basically about the worst loss that I just had. So it kind of makes sense that we would have those kind of metrics and numbers, and that's about what it should do. And again, I added this because originally when I had these strategies in here, you can see the original ones that I had were very low win rates on average. So the 58%, that was the 230 bot. That's the 230 Iron Condor bot. I've done videos on this one too. That one's a little bit higher, but then I added these other two, which were the 1DTE. So this is the 1DTE, which is 27%. This one's the 150 Iron Butterfly. Again, these Iron Butterflies are going to be low win rate, potentially higher reward when they win, but you're just going to lose a little bit of money every single time if they don't win, right? So you have these ones that are 28%, 27%. Those drug down the average win rate of this original Iron, 0DT strategy, which was around 58% win rate. So that kind of drug it down. That's why this overall win rate probably around 50% at this point. And so my attempt here with this one was to kind of push that win rate back up with adding a super high win rate strategy to the portfolio. Now, the problem with C as it stands right now is C is the most ridiculous chart in this bunch, right? So C needs a little bit of work. It was not meant to be something that is the core position, but it was meant to be something that we could add to improve the win rate and kind of smooth out the returns of the overall portfolio. Now, when I look at this, together, I do combine the results of all of this, and I say, look, I can get into all these positions. I don't say right now for any of these, if you have this one, don't get into this one. There's a little bit of leg stomping that does happen sometimes where it tries to get into a position and then it has to wait a little bit and wait for the market to move and then grab a position. But overall, it really doesn't, they don't stomp on each other all too much. They're, very different positions. So when you look at the combined portfolio, this is what ultimately matters to me, is that, we have this grouping of trades and these are the individual positions right here. When you combine them all together, you get a much better, much overall smoother P&L curve. And this is not by any stretch perfectly smooth. You're going to go through lots of volatility periods. You're going to go through periods where you go sideways. You're going to go through periods where you go absolutely dead sideways for a year and do nothing. But you can see that the total summation of this, backtesting wise, looks pretty good. It's handled a lot of volatility events decently well. And so I look at this and I go, okay, this is, broadly speaking, this is what I want to be doing with my 0DT strategies. Like I said, the one that I think, could have a little bit of improvement. And so this is just me reflecting on what I'll do next from all of this. This is how I look at this whole combined strategy. But I think that the one that could have some improvement is definitely C. This is that wide body one. If we can curb some of these total losses here, so some of these bigger losses, sacrifice even maybe a little bit of win rate to do that, because 90% is great, but I don't need to win 90% all the time on this if I can curb some of these bigger losses. That to me is one that I probably will focus on potentially in another video series here, just so you guys can see kind of behind the scenes there. How can I curb that? How can I backtest some different variations of that? So I can find something that, maybe does okay, still has a really high win rate, but overall kind of curbs some of those bigger losses. If I can get C to perform potentially a little bit better, that might help the overall strategy and just smooth out the returns a little bit more. Again, if you look at the overall performance of it, we should be somewhere at the end of the day around 1.2. We should be somewhere around 50%. So we're just hovering just under that right now, which is, makes sense. And so these should be some of the metrics. The overall performance of it should be pretty good. We should be having most of these strategies run to expiration, few that we're taking off early. But I like this one. I like this one right now because this is, kind of the combined set that I'm trading right now. So that's kind of the performance that I've had on these for about 100 or 295 trades, whatever we've had right now. Yeah, 295 trades. We'll see where it goes from here. Probably come back in here around 500 trades and do another video on this. The other thing that I'm considering adding, and I've already started a video series on this kind of journey that I'm on for it, is adding an orb strategy to this. So you'll notice if you just think about all these strategies I'm doing right now, none of these strategies are directional in nature. They're mostly end of the day, working through the end of the day or till the next end of the day with the 0DT, with the 1DTE strategy. But what I haven't introduced yet, and this is why I like the concept of adding orb to this lot of 0DTE trading, is I haven't introduced any type of, momentum or directional type plays. And so to me, that kind of fits well because I'm not doing anything directional or momentum type plays. So I think that the orb, could potentially fit really well into this grouping. It'd be something that maybe gets into earlier in the day also, so I don't get into anything super early right now. That also could kind of make that coverage and, get into something a little bit earlier. That's what I'm kind of thinking about. It's like I'm not thinking about adding another 230 iron condor bot. I'm thinking about how can I add something that complements what I'm already doing right now. So I hope that concept makes sense. Like I said, we'll be doing more on that orb strategy and kind of my journey on that. Haven't found anything yet, haven't turned on anything yet for that orb strategy, but I'm sure I'll find something that ultimately ends up working as we keep moving forward. And then I'll come back in here and do another recap, probably somewhere around 500, 600 trades and see where we're at for 0DT. So I hope this video was helpful. If it was, let me know. Add a comment, share, subscribe, like, all the other stuff. And if you need anything else, let us know. Until next time, happy trading.